Every kid down in Pumpkin Town loved Halloween night, but the ghoul who lived just above town did not think it right. The ghoul hated Halloween, the costumes, the cheer. Now please don't ask why, he'd been bitter for years. It could be his cloak was too ragged and tight, it could be he only came out late at night. But I think the most likely reason, you see, was a heart that was cold as a dead willow tree. Whatever the reason, his mood or his dread, he stood on All Hallows with gloom in his head, staring down from his hill with a grimacing sneer at the porches below filled with pumpkins and cheer. For tonight, growled the ghoul, they'll dance and they'll play, they'll rattle their buckets, they'll chant all the way, they'll giggle, they'll shriek, they'll gallop on brooms, they'll throw candy corn straight across haunted rooms. And he snarled with his fangs and he drummed on the stone. I must find a way to make Halloween stop. For 53 years I put up with this, the laughter, the costumes, the sugary bliss. But then he got an idea, a frightful idea. The ghoul got a wonderfully frightful idea. I know just what to do. He hissed in the gloom, and he stitched up a sack in the shape of a tomb. He grabbed his old boots and his beetle black hat, and he fastened a pumpkin, yes, glowing, to that. All I need is a broomstick. He looked all around, but no witches were near, no brooms to be found. Did that stop the old ghoul? Oh no, not tonight. If I can't find a broom, I'll steal one outright. So he snuck to a porch where a small one lay flat, and he cackled and creaked, Yes, I'll ride that. Then he flew to the first little house on the block, and he crept to the porch with a tick and a talk. He snatched every treat from each bucket and bowl, he took all the taffy and each Tootsie Roll. He tiptoed to doorsteps, to porches galore, swiping moon pies and cobwebs and skulls by the score. He peeled paper bats off of windows with glee, he even stole apples from one bobbing tree. And the very last place that he came to that night was a pumpkin orange cottage in soft candlelight. Inside was a girl not much older than 3, with a velvet black hat and a bat on her knee. The ghoul froze in place. He was caught in mid-creep. This small little witch wasn't even asleep. She blinked up at him and gave a small yawn, as if she'd just woken or not been long gone. She said, Mr. Ghoul, why are you taking our stuff? Aren't your pockets all full? Haven't you got enough? But the ghoul, who was clever and wicked and slick, thought up a fib and he thought it up quick. My dear little tot, he lied with a grin. There's a curse on this candy. It glows from within. I'm taking it home to my ghoul lab, you see, to cleanse it of tricks, and I'll bring it back free. And his fib fooled the girl. He was shrewd, he was sly, but something strange lingered when she met his eye. She smiled a small smile, then tugged at her brim. My name's Maple Moon. Are you lonely like him? She pointed to Bobo, her pet bat with a bow, and the ghoul didn't answer. He just whispered, hello. He patted her head, and he gave back one sweet, then crept up the chimney, still clutching the treats, and the very last thing that he took with a flick was a flicker of warmth in his heart. Just a tick. He climbed to the top of the cold, windy peak with his bag full of mischief and candy and treats. He grinned to himself. They'll all wake up and cry. No pumpkins, no candy, no sweets stacked up high. But then he paused, for down in the village below in the mist came a sound he never expected to exist. It started out soft, just a whisper, a tune, but it grew like a spell underneath the round moon. The children were singing. They still sang with delight, with no candy, no costumes, just starlight and night. And among them he saw, as the wind swirled inside, stood little Maple Moon, with her arms to the sky. And the ghoul, cold and tired, stood there feeling quite strange, as his frost-bitten heart gave a hiccup, then changed. He turned on his heel with a wild little cry, and he whooshed down the hill through the smoke in the sky. He brought back the candy, the pumpkins, the string. He brought back every bone-decorated thing. He ran house to house, giving candy away, tossing goodies to goblins who yelled, Yay, hooray! He joined in the dancing, he painted his face, he even won second in the pie-eating race. And he himself, with a soft little swoon, gave the biggest sweet hug to young Maple Moon. And ever since then, on each spooky night, he hands out full candy bars, lit by moonlight. That's your musical prelude for tonight. The Ghoul Who Stole Halloween. And Little Maple Moon and her pet bat, Bobo. So he wonders if anything else is working yet. Oops, I pushed the wrong button. Okay, so at tonight's story, and please don't worry about it, Callie, the voice wasn't working right anyway. You know. At tonight's story, we will have 13 special guests from Storylink Radio's Haunted Gallery. Our countdown to Halloween 2025 features our podcast, The Portraits Whisper. These are all brand new original stories from portraits, paintings, and artwork, where we let the artwork itself speak. Every picture holds a silence, but silence is never empty. The canvases breathe, the brushstrokes remember, and the statues sigh. Okay, so we listen.
Brand new.
Okay, I still hear me on media and on voice, so I guess we're going to move ahead, and here we go, right? Yeah, okay, cool. The dots look right now. Okay, well, let's give that a shot then. Okay, yeah. Voice is back on. NSL. So, as we normally say at the beginning of the presentation, choose one, but not all three. The Portraits Whisper. Oops, you know what? I forgot to change our picture. Well, we got to change it now because it's pretty. Here we go. There's the picture you were supposed to see here in SL. But now then, if you direct your attention to the beginning, the front of the room, you'll see our guest for tonight. For tonight's first story is Fuseli's Nightmare. And as the ghoul and Little Maple Moon settle in, and whimsy curls into shadows, our first true guest waits. Fuseli's Nightmare. The Nightmare is a 1781 oil painting by the Swiss artist Henry Fuseli. Now don't look away, or the weight on the dreamer's chest may find its way to yours. The suffocating stillness of the air was the first harbinger of what was to come. Anna, a woman whose days were defined by quiet order, lay in the grip of a slumber that offered no peace. A feverish heat radiated from her body, even as a profound cold seemed to creep from the very floorboards and up her spine. Her linen nightgown, damp with sweat, clung to her limbs, which were now thrown into the unnatural posture of utter helplessness. Her head lolled back over the edge of the mattress, and her arm dangled, limp as a marionette's. It was a tableau of vulnerability, an empty stage set for nocturnal malevolence. Anna had felt the change come upon her with the setting sun. The cloying sweetness of the night jasmine, usually a comfort, had turned sickly and heavy. The shadows in her room, once familiar and benign, had begun to writhe and pool in the corners, growing darker and thicker than night itself. A single blood-red curtain, which normally hung placidly by the window, now appeared to bleed its color into the encroaching gloom. The weight came next. Not a gentle pressure, but a crushing, oppressive burden that squeezed the very breath from her lungs. Her chest tightened, and she tried to cry out, but her throat was locked, paralyzed in fear. When she finally found the strength to open her eyes, or what she believed to be her eyes, she saw it. Perched upon her ribs, its form ape-like and grotesque, was the incubus. Its large, luminous eyes, black as a starless void, were fixed on her with an expression that was a chilling mixture of malice and knowing. As the demon settled its full weight upon her, Anna's mind was besieged by a cavalcade of unspoken fears and unspoken desires. She felt her darkest thoughts, her most shameful longings, flash before her in a distorted, mocking phantasmagoria. The creature was not just a weight on her body. It was a parasite upon her unconsciousness, feeding on the very secrets she kept from herself. And then from the deep shadows behind the curtain, another presence emerged, the head of a black horse with fiery, glowing white eyes. Flared nostrils pierced the red folds. It was the Nightmare, a folkloric entity that rode the chests of sleepers, suffocating them with dread. The horse's gaze was not malevolent, but one of horrified witness of animal panic. It saw the violation of the woman and the demon's feast, and it watched with a silent, primal terror. Anna was caught between two horrors: the suffocating intimacy of the demon and the spectral, horrified gaze of the horse. In her mind, she was no longer in her bedroom, but in a theater of the grotesque, her own psyche the stage, and these monstrous apparitions the players. The pressure on her chest intensified, a searing brand of fear that marked her soul. The incubus smiled, a silent, knowing leer, and the horse, a horrified nightmare, looked on, its eyes burning with a witness she would never forget. She was trapped, a fragile, rational mind, at the mercy of the irrational, supernatural forces of her own subconscious. And that's our first guest, the nightmare, telling their own story. And our next, from the dreamer's bed, we step into a hall of flickering lights where one machine still hums, The Ghost in the Arcade. The old arcade hadn't had visitors in years. Rainwater seeped through the ceiling tiles, dripped onto cracked linoleum, and ran in dark streaks down the sides of the machines whose lights no longer blinked. Dust lay like ash over everything, except for the faint phosphorescent glow that sometimes flickered in the corner booth, as if the game was still being played. That was where the ghost lingered. Every evening, as the rain settled into its familiar rhythm on the roof, it drifted from the shadows. White-sheeted, wide-eyed, it glided silently to its machine, the one that still remembered. Once, long ago, the boy who became the ghost had won the high score there. A perfect run, a legend in neon letters. He'd gone home giddy, never knowing the arcade would shutter before he would return. Machines unplugged, doors locked, laughter and coin jingles silenced forever. But the machine remembered, and so did he. And now, every night, the little ghost stood before it, waiting for the screen to spark to life one more time, for the pixelated music to hum, for his hands, no longer there, to dance across the buttons and reclaim the score no one else had beaten. Sometimes, if you passed the broken windows at just the right moment, you might see it, the faint glow of a screen that shouldn't work, and the reflection of a boy who shouldn't be there. And if you listened closely above the patter of the rain, you might even hear the click of phantom buttons, keeping a promise to a game that would never end. And when the glow faded and the ghost was gone, all that lingered was the silence of an arcade that still remembered and waited. Now, neon fades to candlelight, and a child's whispers stirs in the dark. Dory's Little Red Riding Hood waits at the bedside. Little Red Riding Hood is an oil painting based on a wood engraving created by the French artist Gustave Doré for Les Contes de Perrault, the fairy tales of Charles Perrault, published in 1862. I am Dory's canvas. I remember every girl who has clutched this blanket. My paint holds their terror. My oils keep their wide eyes open forever. Tonight it is Lisette. The cottage was quiet, save for the hum of a fly at the window pane, and the rustle of the embroidered bed sheets, that is. The late afternoon light filtered through lace curtains, painted dusty stripes across the wooden floor. Lisette clutched her blanket and her basket, the promised cakes and wine feeling like a heavy burden, the handle cut into her fingers, the weight of the food pressing down as if she carried her own fate inside it. She had felt eyes on her in the forest, black eyes glinting between the trunks, but the trees whispered nothing, and she hurried until the path broke free into the clearing. Now she stood at the foot of the bed, a nervous tremor in her small hands. Something was wrong. The room smelled of wool left too long in the rain, and of something sharper, like iron. Grandmere's bed sat in shadow, the coverlet pulled high, the bonnet large upon her head. The shape beneath the blankets was not small and fragile, but long and stretched in the rise and fall, too deep, too slow. Grandma's face, framed by the old-fashioned bonnet, was a pale, unfamiliar mask. The shadows from the bedside lamp exaggerated the gaunt features, the long nose, the pointed chin.
"My, what big ears you have,"
Lisette whispered, her voice barely a breath. The words felt like a litany, spoken by 100 little girls in 100 quiet rooms. The figure in the bed shifted, and a deep rattling cough escaped its lips. "The better to hear you with, my dear," came the hoarse reply. The sound like gravel in a sack fitted with musk and damp earth. Lisette drew a sharp breath.
"My, what big eyes you have."
Her own gaze locked on them, pools of wet amber glinting in the dim light, bright, wild. The figure on the bed leaned closer, its cough rattling into a growl. "The better to see you with, my dear." It rasped, each word steaming the air between them. Lisette's eyes drifted from the cap to the creature's clawed hands, twitching restlessly atop the quilt. Then she saw the teeth. They were no longer Grandmere's small, worn pearls, but long, jagged spikes, stained with something dark and slick. A cold dread, a thing of ancient horror, snaked its way up Lisette's spine. Her chest rose and fell haltingly. She clutched the blanket in her fists, knuckles whitening. For a heartbeat, she thought of Grandmere's gentle hands sewing this very lace, guiding her own fingers on a thimble, teaching her the neatness of a stitch. She wanted that memory to hold, but it slipped away like a thread through a needle's eye.
"Oh, Grandmere,"
she said, her voice now a frantic, tiny thing.
"what big teeth you have."
The wolf's eyes smile widened, a cavernous, terrifying gash in the darkness of the bedclothes. "The better to eat you with, my dear," he growled, the voice no longer a poor imitation of a frail old woman, but a wolf's true predatory snarl. The world seemed to fracture then. The hum of the fly turned into the buzzing of 1,000 trapped souls. The lace curtains shimmered with spectral forms. Not spirits, but memories of other girls in red cloaks, their faces twisted in terror. Lisette saw a flash of another cottage, another little girl, swallowed whole, a ghostly procession of the devoured, all staring out for the forest of the wolf's shadow. Lisette's terror was a new thing, sharp and cold, unlike the familiar fairy tale she had been told. This was the original story, the one from before the hunters came, the one meant to scare little girls straight. She was not just a girl with a red cloak. She was an archetype, the newest sacrifice in a long, unbroken lineage. The cakes and wine in her basket meant for the ill felt like an offering to a monster. The wolf lunged, and Lisette screamed, a sound that echoed not from her throat, but from the depths of a timeless, echoing dread. A scream that seared across the room, across my very canvas, into me. It joined the endless chorus of other girls who had stood in this place, who have clenched this lace, who have spoken this litany before the wolf's gaping mouth. Lisette's hands tightened on the blanket. For a heartbeat, she thought of Grandmere, frail and kind, swallowed whole. And as the bedclothes became a smothering weight, she saw one last vision. A hunter, somewhere in the forest, just beginning to stir. But it was a dream of rescue with axe and courage, but not here, not in me. My oils know no hunter, my brushstrokes offer no reprieve. This tale belongs to the wolf. The wolf's teeth descended, and Lisette was just another soul in a spectral parade. Her red cloak, a blood stain on the wolf's memory, a dark cautionary tale waiting for the next little girl to stray. And I, Dory's canvas, will remember Lisette, as I remember them all. Well, that was intense. And so, from grandmother's bed, We now go to a jagged shore, chains, waves, and the dragon's shadow. Arthur Rackham's Andromeda. Andromeda stands before us, once she reses in. A watercolor by Arthur Rackham, English book illustrator, painted in 1913. The canvas is pale, the maiden chained, the sea restless. But tonight the painting is silent. It withholds its voice from us. It falls to us to whisper what the canvas hides. The curse that has haunted every collector who dared to claim it. The painting arrived shrouded in canvas and shadow, delivered to the auction house in a crate smelling of salt and decay. The catalog simply called it Andromeda, an Arthur Rackham original, depicting a terrified maiden chained to a rock. Julian Croft, the seasoned expert charged with its authentication, saw only beauty and menace in Rackham's signature line work, and the pale, ethereal watercolor washes. The red of Andromeda's hair, a stark flame against the muted tones of the turbulent sea, was particularly striking. But as the painting hung in a sealed, climate-controlled viewing room, Julian noticed things that the catalog could not describe. The turbulent sea in the painting seemed to writhe, the watermark subtly shifting on the canvas as if restless. The coiled, serpentine sea dragon in the corner, with its glowing, malevolent eyes, seemed to watch him, not the maiden. And Andromeda herself, her face turned in terror, was not quite looking away from the beast, but at some unseen horror behind the viewer, under the stairs, in the reflection of the glass. Julian was a skeptic, a man of empirical evidence. Yet one evening, while working late, Julian noticed the mist rising from the sea dragon's nostrils had thickened in the painting, and the temperature in the room had dropped perceptibly. As he stepped closer, the smell of salt and decay intensified, not from the crate, but from the canvas itself, as if the painting were breathing the frigid sea air. The terror of the depicted princess was no longer confined to her painted form. It began to bleed into the viewing room. Julian, frozen in place, heard a faint, high-pitched scratching sound. It came from behind the painting. He hesitantly unlatched the frame and carefully lifted the canvas away from the wall. Behind it, carved into the plaster, were a series of jagged, swirling lines, a mirror of the sea and the serpentine creature in Rackham's art. But as Julian watched, the plaster began to flake and crumble, revealing more carvings underneath, colder and deeper than the first. Julian's research had uncovered the painting's provenance. It had been sold at auction repeatedly over the years, with each owner selling it for increasingly lower prices. The reason was a pattern of misfortunes. One owner's house had suffered a mysterious flood. Another's family had been plagued by strange ailments, and one collector was found dead in his study, a serene but frightened expression on his face. Julian saw their names at old forgotten auction records and realized their misfortunes had become the canvas's history. Driven by a morbid curiosity, Julian returned to the archives and found the first, most complete auction record. It dated back to 1913, the year Rackham had created this illustration. The description for the painting noticed a curious detail. The buyer was one Elias Thorne, a reclusive art collector known for his eccentric purchases. Attached to the record was a brittle yellowed note from the artist himself, tucked away for decades. To Elias Thorne, the sacrifice is necessary. She begs for it, and the beast demands it. The chains are no longer art, but a promise. When the sea rises to meet its debt, the maiden is not the victim, but the bait. Julian felt a cold dread settle in his bones. He returned to the viewing room and gazed at Andromeda, no longer seeing a helpless victim, but a willing participant. Her terror was not for the beast, but a grim joy, a promise of release. The mist from the serpent's nostrils now seemed like a whisper, and the swirling water on the canvas, a beckoning finger. The scratching behind the painting had become a loud, frantic clamor. The serpentine lines carved into the wall began to glow with a faint greenish luminescence, and the smell of salt water filled the room. Julian backed away, his gaze locked on the painting. He had a sudden terrifying epiphany. The painting was not haunted. It was the collector who was sacrificed. The collector was the true victim, his misfortunes feeding the canvas and its monstrous occupant. Each subsequent sale was a transfer of the curse, a new name added to the carving behind the painting. The longer the painting remained with an owner, the more the sea monster fed on their misery. The green light intensified, and Julian felt the room grow cold, the air thick with salt and decay. The canvas, with its ethereal washes and delicate lines, was a beautiful prison, and the collector was the unfortunate sacrifice tethered to the curse. The chains on Andromeda's wrist were not for her. Julian realized with a jolt of horror, but for the one who had possessed the painting too long. The sea dragon did not seek the maiden, it sought the new collector, the new sacrifice. Julian fled the viewing room, the frantic scratching and hiss of the cold sea at his back. He never went back to the auction house. He never saw the painting again. But on the anniversary of his escape, as the sea breeze carried a faint smell of salt and decay, Julian received a small unmarked package. Inside was a single, brittle, red hair, still smelling faintly of salt water. And Julian knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that Andromeda's red hair was not a flame of life, but a bloody promise. And the chains of the painting were still searching for their new owner. But the sea is not the only place where chains bind. In Japan, betrayal breeds its own haunt. Dosugu no gosuto okahangi shamasu. Please welcome our next guest, the ghost of Oiwa. And remember, direct your glances to the front of the room so you can see the painting, because the painting is our guest. The Ghost of Oiwa, a woodblock print created by the Japanese artist Utagawa Kuniyoshi in 1836. The image comes from the kabuki play Ghost Story of Yatsuya on the Tokaido and captures the horrifying vengeance of Oiwa against her treacherous husband, Iyamon. The image was first carved in wood, ink was applied, and then printed to washi paper, which is often made from the mulberry plant. Kuniyoshi's woodblock whispers of betrayal carved into paper and ink, where Oiwa's ghost finds a lantern for her rage and Iyamon faces the light he can never escape. I am Kuniyoshi's woodblock, carved in 1836. I am the ghost of Oiwa. I was born of a sharp knife, carving a wound into a block of cherry wood. My story was not coaxed forth with a gentle brush. I remember every gouge of the knife, every wound that became her face, and every line you see is the shape of that violence. I am the ghost of Oiwa. Forget the world outside. There is only this room, this moment. There is only the guilty man and the curse he created. First, look at him. Tamiya Iyamon. See how he scrambles back, his hand thrown up not to defend himself, but in a useless gesture of pure abject terror. His sword is at his hip, but it is of no use. How can you kill what is already dead? How can you cut paper that is already torn? He thought he was free. He had his new wife, his new life, all secured by the poison he fed to the woman who loved him. He believed a ghost was just a story told to frighten children, but he was wrong. But this tale is not his alone. Look closer at the lantern. Look at me. I am the ghost, but I was not always so. I was once a simple chochin, a paper lantern. My purpose was to hold a small, clean flame. I was meant to cast a warm, gentle glow on a tatami mat, to illuminate a hand pouring tea, to soften the edges of the night in the house of Oiwa and Iyamon. I witnessed small kindnesses, and then I witnessed a great and terrible cruelty. I watched as her hair fell out in clumps from the poison he gave her. I watched as her face, once beautiful, swelled and disfigured. I watched as her love curdled into an agony that transcended death. When her spirit was torn from her body, it did not leave. It was too heavy with the poison of betrayal. It searched for a home, for a way to show her husband the new face he had given her. It found me. Her rage was the flame. Her sorrow was the oil. Her dying shriek was the sound of my paper skin tearing. My bamboo frame became her bones. The dark ink of her falling hair became my own tangled shadows. The face that had once been a smooth, plain surface puckered and tore itself into her likeness, one eye drooping, the other wide with an eternal burning question. This is the moment I hold, the moment I am. Iamon, seeking to light a simple lantern to push back the dark, instead comes face to face with the darkness he created. He pulls the cord, and instead of a flicker of light, he gets a flicker of memory. My paper mouth opens. The name he hears is his own, whispered in a voice of dry, rustling leaves. So you see, I am not merely a picture of a haunting. I am the haunting itself, given form in ink and paper. I am the prison that holds them both. He is forever recoiling in terror, and she is forever emerging to confront him. He can never escape his guilt, and she can never quench her rage. I was carved in violence. I burn in vengeance with a cold fire that never dies. So a spirit wronged leads us now to a princess drowned in flood and treachery. Princess Terrakanova. An oil painting by the Russian artist Konstantin Fuseli, created in 1862, based on the legend of Princess Terrakanova's death during the flood in St. Petersburg in 1777. I hope the pictures are rezzing in fast enough for you to see them here in SL. They're kind of blurry on my screen. I am Flavitsky's canvas, my frame a prison as cold as the stones it depicts. I breathe mildew, taste rust, and I feel the water creeping higher with every glance. I hold the image of a woman condemned to the chilling finality of her own life, her red silk gown heavy, her hair spilling gold across the damp straw, her face raised not to hope but to despair. I am a grim guest tonight. I hold within me the cold, damp air of a prison cell in the Peter and Paul fortress. I show you a young woman, her face a mask of terror and despair. I show you the single barred window that offers no escape, and the straw on the stone floor, now soaked by the water that creeps relentlessly inward. I hold the image of her last frantic moments as rats scurry for safety, and the shadows grow long and menacing. I am the only witness, yet I keep her agony alive. My oils have trapped the rising flood, the rats that scurry to higher ledges, the trickle of light through the barred window. The true story of this chilling torment does not belong to me, however, but to the prisoner herself. It is a story of betrayal and terror, told not with brushstrokes, but with a final desperate breath. You stand safe outside the glass. She does not. Listen closely. Hear this story from the one who lived it. They called me a fraud, an impostor. They called me the Princess Terrakanova. They said my claims to the throne were a lie. Perhaps they were, perhaps not. All I know now is this cell, this stone, and the cold that has come to claim me. Call me what you will, the stones know the truth. They drip with it. My betrayers left me here, ankle deep in the Neva's icy breath. The water climbs higher each hour, pulling the straw from beneath me, soaking the velvet that once touched courts and palaces. Now it clings to my skin like a winding sheet. I lean against the wall, but the stone runs slick beneath my palms. Cold, alive. The rats chatter in the rafters, waiting. They do not fear the flood. They know it is mine alone. Once I dreamed of thrones and crowns. Once sunlight crowned me, not shadow. That memory burns behind my eyes as the tide steals my breath. It is crueler than any chain, that memory of freedom. I remember the betrayal that led me here, the false promises of love and freedom that brought me to this cold fortress. But that pain is nothing compared to this. The water is a patient visitor, rising inch by agonizing inch, a slow, merciless flood. It tastes of the Neva River, and is here to bring my end. They did not need a blade or a noose. They gave my death to the cold, dark waters. I watched the rats scurry from the rising tide, their panicked movements mirroring my own trapped heart. No guards return to me. No rescuer comes to me. Only the water, higher, higher, pressing my skirts against my knees, tugging, pulling, whispering. Soon it will reach my heart. Soon it will still my heart. The cold will be complete, and my story will be nothing more than a painting, a haunting memory of a life that ended not with a fight, but with the quiet, chilling indifference of the waters. The only witness, this cold stone and the silent canvas that traps my final despair. Yet I do not die. My last moment is pinned here, nailed to the painting's frame, eternal as the tide. You see me drowning, but I do not die. I drown again and again and again, forever. Oh, thank you, Princess Terkanova. And yet, not all hauntings rage. Some whisper in porcelain. From the sculptures and curiosities wing of our haunted gallery comes our next special guests. An elder couple, Homeco Collectibles, long parted, now placed side by side once more, their glaze holding the story the years could not silence.
I was clay, once pliant in the sculptor's hands. The kiln burned me still, motionless, and now my smile will never fade. I hold my apple forever, red as the day it was painted, though no hand will ever taste it. And I too am sealed in porcelain. My cane never splinters, my pipe ever smoulders, my vest never frays. My eyes look kindly, but they never blink. We two sit eternal, unchanging as the world around us withers and renews. We have stood in parlors, on mantels, in kitchens where children grew old. We have heard quarrels echo and fade, lullabies sung to sleep, chairs creak empty at last. A Christmas candle once burned so close, its wax flexed my cheek, laughter rattled my gaze. Tears, too, have fallen near our feet. We have been centerpieces and dust catchers, companions and curiosities. And then we were parted. Strangers on different isles, forgotten beneath fluorescent thrift store lights. Until a kindly someone placed us close, side by side again, as time itself sighed in relief. And now a mosaic glows behind us, bright as stained glass, as though it honors our reunion. Yet we know it is not warmth but glaze that binds us, not breath but silence. Our smiles are fixed, our love is fixed, and in the stillness of the porcelain we whisper, eternal, unblinking, together, together.
And now, their tenderness dissolves into fire and ash. Karl Bryalov's Last Day of Pompeii, an oil painting created by the Russian artist Karl Bryalov circa 1830. When Bryalov painted Pompeii's doom, he captured more than a city, he trapped its souls, and on autumn nights they still stir. In the autumn of the year, when the veil between worlds thinned to a gossamer thread, the old curator of the State Russian Museum in St. Petersburg approached Bryalov's colossal canvas. He was drawn to the grand apocalyptic scene, particularly a small figure in the upper left corner, a self-portrait of the artist, clutching his paints and brushes. The curator, in his youth, had served as an assistant to a mystic who claimed that on autumn evenings, the spirits of artworks could be called forth. He placed a carved lantern at the base of the painting, its flickering grin casting restless shadows across the painted chaos. He spoke a low, rhyming verse taught to him long ago, and as the final word faded, the air in the gallery grew still and cold. The painted Ryalov turned his head. His eyes, once mere dabs of paint, held the fiery glow of a Vesuvius now. He stepped from the canvas. The painted ash on his robes falling to the gallery floor is real, cold powder. "You have called me from my work," the spectre said, his voice the rustle of 1,000 dry leaves. The curator, though old, did not cower. "You are trapped in the last day of Pompeii. What do you see?" Ryalov gestured to his masterpiece. "I see a moment, frozen. But the souls, they cannot rest. They replay their final minutes every night the veil grows thin." The painted street began to shimmer. The curator watched as the figures came to life, a mother hugging her daughters, a son carrying his elderly father, a man trying to calm his panicked horse. But they moved without sound, their silent terror amplified by the spectral form. A ghostly pumice shower rained down on them, and they were enveloped by a cloud of translucent ash. They vanished, and the painting returned to its static state. "It is a purgatory of paint and canvas," said the artist's ghost. "A beautiful, eternal hell." "Is there no escape?" asked the curator. "Ah, only through a different end," Ryalov replied. "I froze them in their terror, but they long for an autumn death, a quiet end." The curator then went to his study and returned with a single crimson maple leaf. "The end of one season for another," he whispered, pressing the leaf to the edge of the painting. The painted street of tombs pulsed with warm light. One by one, the specters of the Pompeians emerged, no longer terrified but serene. Their forms dissolved into swirls of amber, gold, and crimson, like leaves swept away by a cool breeze. Ryalov's ghost watched them go, a sad, knowing smile on his face. When the last whisper of color had faded, he returned to his place in the painting, his gaze once more directed toward the viewer. The curator looked at the canvas. The horror remained, but there was a new stillness, a sense of peace beneath the chaos. He looked at the window, where the cold, crisp air carried the dancing glow of freed souls. So, let me get an idea where we are time-wise, because we got a late start. Let's take a look at... I want to read you all of them. They're all so fun. One more moment, please. Take you at 8:30 we get them all read, but I told you we'd end sooner than that. Okay. Let's go to Nighthawks. I can find the number. There we go. Now, this is probably a painting you've seen somewhere in your life. From ancient ruin to modern night, where glass walls frame a diner and loneliness is painted in electric light. Hopper's Nighthawks. An oil on canvas painting by American artist Edward Hopper. It portrays 4 people in a downtown diner late at night as viewed through the diner's large glass window. The light coming from the diner illuminates a darkened and deserted urban streetscape. The painting was created in 1942 and was inspired by Ernest Hemingway's short story, The Killers. In turn, it has itself inspired a number of films being recreated multiple times as full movie sets. Hey, we did The Killers back in 2012. I remember doing that one. Many stories are about a ghost entering a home, but this one is about a home that is itself the ghost. My pigments hold a lonely tale, which is, I think, the most fitting truth for the particular quality of my light, and the particular nature of my silence. Settle in. The coffee is on, though you will find it has no taste. Let me tell you about a night that never ends. I am a clean, well-lighted trap. I am a beacon for the lonely, a port in a storm of silence. That is what they see. From the dark and empty streets of a city that has forgotten them, they see my clean counters, my polished chrome, my stark, humming, fluorescent lights, and they think refuge. They are mistaken. The man with his back to you arrived first. He was a man walking away from a life that had become a stranger to him. He walked for hours, letting the city noise scour him clean, until the noise faded and there was only the sound of his own footsteps. He didn't want a destination, he wanted an oblivion. When he saw my light, it seemed to offer just that. A place to be nobody, a place to simply cease. He pushed open a door that was only there for him, and only for a moment. The couple came next. They were not lovers, not any more. They were two people sitting on a wreckage of their shared history, the final cutting words already spoken. The silence in their apartment had become a physical weight, and they fled it, walking side by side, but 1,000 miles apart. They saw my light not as a comfort, but as a neutral territory, a sterile environment where their connection could be officially pronounced dead. They too found a door that shimmered into existence just for them. They all took their seats. The man behind the counter was already there. He is always here. He is my lure, the first specimen, the one who makes my trap seem real. He performs his duty with a dreamlike precision. He wipes the counter that is already clean. He checks the coffee urns that are perpetually full. He is the quiet engine of this place. At first, there's a sense of relief for them all. The anonymous man can finally stop running. The couple can finally stop speaking. But the silence here is different. It is not empty. It is heavy, thick, and humming. The sugar in the shakers is solid, fused into a single block of crystal. The clock on the wall has no hands. The city outside, viewed through my great seamless pane of glass, is a perfect, unmoving photograph. No cars pass by, no papers blow down the street. It is the woman who feels it first. A desire to leave. The argument is over. The silence has done its work. She looks for the exit. Her eyes trace the long, clean line of the cherrywood counter to the wall where the cash register sits, and then along the wall of windows that curves around the corner. She scans it again. Her gaze becomes more frantic. There is no door. There is no handle, no seam, no frosted glass, no threshold. There is only this smooth, unbroken wall of the diner, and the vast, seamless window through which they entered a world they can now only view. Her partner sees the look on her face, and his own eyes begin to search, first with curiosity, then with a dawning icy dread. The man with his back to us, feeling this sudden shift in the atmosphere, slowly turns his head, his face a mask of weary confusion. They're all looking now, searching for the way out. And in that moment, for the first time all night, they are no longer strangers. They are connected, finally, by a single shared horrifying truth. They are specimens in a jar. They are my nighthawks, forever captured in the sterile, humming light of the night they sought to lose themselves in. The counterman continues to wipe the clean counter. He never looks up. He has seen this realization 1,000 times. It's the only real event that ever happens here. And I hold it. The moment the search begins for a door that is not there, the moment a quiet refuge becomes a pristine, inescapable tomb. Okay. So, if you'll go with me, I think we'll try to do like 3 more. They're only about 5 minutes a piece anyway, and see where we end up with. I know which one I want to end on for you because it's related to our upstairs Bradbury. One moment, let me scan ahead, see which ones we're going to do. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, yeah, we'll be okay. Oh, what's that last one? Okay, so this next one, where are we? What did we just do? Was that Hopper? We just did Hopper, huh? But outside the diner's glow, the forest stirs. Yeah, you can have coffee, but it has no taste. Outside the diner's glow, the forest stirs, branches groan, and the dead whisper and said the checks ghosts on a tree. Goodbye. And thanks for coming. This is a sinister, dreamlike work of the New Objectivity movement created by Austrian painter Franz Sedlacek in 1933. The oil on canvas painting currently lives in Vienna, Austria. On a barren tree beneath a haunted moon, the dead gather in silence, yet their whispers call for one more. I am Sedlichek's ghost on a tree. The branches I show no longer bear fruit, only the dead. Here now in our boreal allegory. I am the tree. Once I was rooted in earth at new spring. Once I drank deep rains and unfurled bright leaves. Birds nested in my branches. Children carved their names into my bark. But seasons shifted, the ground soured, and the green bled from me. No blossoms, no fruit. Now I bear only one harvest, the dead. And if you haven't looked really close at the painting, those are not birds. They came first in ones and twos, drifting toward me like leaves torn loose from another autumn. A thief with rope burns on his neck, a liar who deceived his kin, a child who wandered away. They did not climb, they settled, perched as though my branches had always been waiting. Now they arrive in flocks, cloaked figures with hollow eyes, skull faces grinning in silence. My limbs sag beneath them, but I dare not shake them free, for each who falls, another claws its way up, and the weight is never lessened. They do not speak with voices, they speak with breath. Whispers seep from them like frost rising off stone. You may think the wind stirs the boughs tonight. No, that is them. One branch for you, one branch for you. Their words thrum in my marrow, and still they come closer, pressing their grins into the hollows of the bark. My roots twist as if in pain. There is no escape. The soil grips tighter than chains. Look closely. There's always an empty branch, one polished, smooth, waiting. Do not comfort yourself. It is not for someone else. The branch waits for you. The tree never sleeps. The tree never lets go. Let's go. The chorus swells, the chant of betrayals, of promises broken, of lives ended in fire and water. A merchant dragged down by debt, a bride whose heart hardened to ash, a soldier who struck down his own kin in war. Each whisper overlaps, weaving into a dirge that does not stop. And if you stand too near, you may find the voices brushing your own ear, trying on the shape of your name. A place for you, a place for you, a place for you. The moon gazes coldly on this congress of the forgotten. It shines not as a blessing, but as a witness. Its light paints their robes the color of winding sheets, makes their eye sockets glow faintly like lanterns with no flame. My bark groans beneath them, the dead shift restless, jostling for a space as if sensing a new guest about to arrive. My branches creak, aching for relief, but there is none. Once I thought I could resist them. I thought if I stayed silent, if I did not bend, the ghosts would pass me by, but they do not pass, they remember. They remember every cruelty, every cowardice, every secret sin. They bind themselves to me because I remember too. And still they wait. Closer now you can see their skulls tilting unison, their jaws parting, though no breath stirs within. Yet you feel it, a cold breath against your cheek. Climb higher, climb higher. I am the tree. I cannot lie. Your branch is ready. You may not believe me tonight, but the ghosts already know. The choir has rehearsed your name, syllable by syllable, until it fits their endless chant. Do not turn away. Do not think distance will save you. My branches reach further than shadow, further than dream. The moment your night comes, your feet will know the path, and you will climb too. Oh, it's a place for you, a place for you, a place for you. Okay, that was fun. So, two more, a short one, and then the final one. Does that sound okay? Can we handle that? Try to make up time, you know. No? Okay. And of course, these are all on our podcast, along with many more, because we started countdowning September 2nd, and we're doing one every night through October 31st. So through the branches, we glimpse a figure staring back, haunted and unblinking. Les Visionnaires. The Visionary, an oil painting from the Italian artist Serafino Macchiati, flowing from his mind and fingers in 1904. It uses a limited palette, and with emphasis on light and shadow, focusing on the sublime. This is the chilling silence of a home that has turned against its master. The air in this frame is thick with dust and regret. Come, let us listen to what its shadows have to say. I am what the house remembers. I am the moment that stained the very air, the instant that plays and replays in the dark of the upstairs landing long after the occupants are gone. The man you see is Mr. Alistair Finch, a man of numbers, timetables, and cold, hard facts. He believed that what he could not be measured did not exist. Emotions were a chemical imbalance, love a temporary delusion, and ghosts a fiction for the feeble-minded. His wife, Alara, had been the opposite. She had been a creature of poetry, superstition, moonlight. He had called it foolishness. He had tolerated her. When she died, quietly, of a sickness that baffled his doctors, he was saddened, in the way one is saddened by an inconvenient disruption to a schedule. He filed her away. He is on his way out of the house now. It is late. Well after midnight on this crisp September evening. In his hands, clutched to his chest like a prayer book, is a small velvet-lined box. It contains her last foolishness, a lock of her pale hair, a pressed flower from their wedding day, and a silly little silver locket he'd given her, which she claimed could hold memories. He intends to drop the box into the river on his way to his office, a final logical tidying up of a life, the last variable accounted for and removed. But a house does not forget so easily. The moment his foot touched the landing, the air changed. It became heavy and cold, a deep cellular cold that had nothing to do with autumn night. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall below, a sound that had measured out every second of his logical life, fell silent, and the darkness at the top of the stairs began to coalesce. It was not a sudden appearance. It was more like the darkness was bled of its pigment, leaving behind a form of pure, sorrowful light. It was her, Ilara. Look at her. She is barely a suggestion of a woman, woven from moonlight and memory. Her face is indistinct because he has spent a year trying to forget it. A spirit's face is only as clear as the memory of the one who sees it. But her intent is unmistakable. She is reaching for him, or rather for the box he clutches. It is not a gesture of malice. It is a plea. Her hand dissolves into motes of light like fading embers because he is trying to destroy the last anchor she has to this world. She's not here to harm him. She's here to beg him not to complete her erasure. She is fighting for the right to have existed at all. And so, I hold this moment forever. The man of facts, paralyzed, his entire worldview shattering into a million icy shards. He is not afraid of a monster. He is terrified of a truth. He is face to face with the ghost he himself created through his own refusal to remember. I do not show you what happens next. I only hold the terrible silent question that hangs between them. Does he finally acknowledge the memory he tried to bury? Or does he turn and flee, leaving her to fade completely? I am the canvas of that choice, the awful, eternal pause between forgetting and being haunted forever. All right, then. Our final tale for the night. Hope those pictures rezzed in. They're slow rezzing in for me. I mean, in SL anyway. Yes, that was a chilling vision, was it not? And what vision is more chilling than a child at play? Joining us in anticipation of the Bradbury Project's upcoming travels, she is Girl with Death Mask, also known as Niño con Máscara de la Calavera, an evocative oil painting from Frida Kahlo, created in 1938, possibly as a self-portrait at a younger age, wearing a traditional Mexican skull mask from the Dia de los Muertos festival, holding a marigold and standing near a protective tiger mask. She plays alone, yet the dead and jaguar are always watching. 38. Okay, we'll pause right now. The paintings are all actual classic paintings, and some we've created by other means. The stories are all originals created by, drumroll, me. All the ones we've done so far and many more you can catch on our podcast, which I'll give you a link at the end. This is Girl with Death Mask. I am Carlo's canvas. I remember the child who stood here in her pink dress, defiant under a sky of indifference. Come with me now to a place of hard sun and little rain, a place where death is not a final, terrifying stranger, but a constant companion familiar with decorated flowers. I am a small canvas, but I hold a world. I am Frida's girl with death mask. Do not be fooled by the bright pink of her dress. That is the color of defiance, a splash of life against the cracked, thirsty earth. The sky above her is a flat, indifferent gray, offering no comfort, no promise of rain. This is not a place for easy games. This is a place for rituals. Her face is hidden, but I know her. I know the stern of her little mouth and the ancient wisdom in her dark eyes. You see her standing alone, and you read the title She Plays Alone. Frida was ever clever with her words. She knew the truth is often the opposite of what is said. This little girl is the least alone person you have ever seen. Look at her hands. In her right she holds a marigold, the sempescule, the flower that guides the spirits of the dead. In her left she holds the reason for the flower, a skull mask. You think she is the one who will wear the mask, a child playing dress-up for Dia de los Muertos. Easy for you to say, but no. You have it backwards. The mask is not for her. The mask is her playmate. The mask has a name, though you cannot hear it at first. Itzel. And she was the sister who lived only in the quiet spaces of my dear Frida's heart. A breath that was never drawn, a shadow that followed her everywhere, a ghost not of life that was, but of a life that should have been. When you were a child as lonely as this one, you learned the unseen world is often more populated than the one you can touch. And so they play. The girl holds up the mask, Itzel's face, and speaks to it. She tells her about the day, about the ants marching on the cracked earth, about the way the sun warms her shoulders. The marigold is her offering. It sent a bridge between their two worlds, a way for Itzel to smell the living earth. But there's another player in this game. Look at her feet. That is no toy. That jaguar mask lying in the dust, that is the other kind of spirit, the one that is not a gentle memory. The jaguar is the spirit of this harsh land, of the sudden night, of the hunger that prowls in the wilderness of the heart. It is old and powerful, and it is jealous. It wants the little girl for itself. It wants her to forget the gentle ghost of Itzel and play a wilder, more dangerous game. Every day the girl comes here to play. Every day the jaguar is waiting. But she is Frida's child, forged in pain and resilience. She ignores the jaguar. She lays it flat on the ground, a declaration of its powerlessness over her. Today her love for her sister is stronger. Today the memory of what should have been is more real than the ancient hunger at her feet. I hold this moment, not a game of make-believe, but a battle of spirits, fought with a flower and an act of remembrance. She is not playing alone. She is standing between two worlds, holding the face of the sister she loves, while firmly planting her foot on the neck of the demon she refuses to fear. The victory is quiet, and it is absolute, at least for today. Tomorrow, the jaguar will wait again. But today love has teeth sharper than death. And so, our walk through the gallery ends here for tonight. But do not think the whispers end with us. They will follow you into the night, waiting until another canvas calls you back. Visit our podcast, The Portraits Whisper, for many more tales from the gallery.